Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to all. Welcome to Happy Home online classes. As I begin, I quote the holy verses here and I translate. When we read Quran, we seek refuge from Allah. The translation of the holy verses are, and the earth we spread it out and cast therein firmly, set mountains and made grow therein something of every beautiful kind, giving insight, a reminder for every servant who turns to Allah. Welcome in today's session of Geography Class 7. The topic for today is minerals and fossil fuels. Fossil fuels. We have already discussed about what are fossil fuels in our live session. So I would just like you all to please recall all that thing and share with yourself. What are fossil fuels? Yes, I know you know the answers. Here it goes. Fossil fuels are formed from the remains of prehistoric dead animals and plants due to geologic process. Years ago, when prehistoric animals and plants died, layers of rock and dirt gradually buried them, and over millions of years, heat and pressure from Earth's crust decomposed these organisms into one of the three main kinds of the fuels, that is, oil, natural gas, and coal. Now, when I'm talking about prehistoric time, I simply mean the Carboniferous period. Carboniferous is a word which has come from the carbon-bearing content that are formed during those periods which lasted millions of years ago. That's approximately the age of the dinosaurs. Now, let's discuss about the formation of fossil fuels, that how are they being formed? Coal. We know very well that coal is a very old fossil fuel. The better types of coal have been taken several hundred million years to form. Coal is formed by the decomposition of natural vegetation, especially equatorial swamp forests. Yes, the formation of oil begins in warm, shallow oceans where they were present on the earth millions of years ago. The dead creatures under intense pressure decomposes into oil. Further heat and pressure causes oil and to decompose for a much longer time, forming natural gas locked in it inside oil-bearing rocks above oil. These rocks have millions of tiny holes and act like a sponge and soak up the gas as it is formed and trap inside non-porous or impermeable rocks under the ground. As in this picture, you can clearly observe the composition of all the three fossil fuels. That is, they are mainly comprising of carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, sulfur, and oxygen. These are all the things which are present in all three of the fossil fuels, right? So that means we can easily say that these are the carbon hydrogen compounds. Now, let's go to watch a video and see how these fossil fuels are being formed.
we're going to be looking at fossil fuels. Fossil fuels are the fuels that we rely heavily upon, but in our lifetime, maybe some of these may run out, or some of them may last a little bit longer, but they're not the ones that we really like to burn because they really, really pollute the atmosphere. So fossil fuels are made from dead plants and animals, and unfortunately we can't just kill plants and animals and try to convert them into fossil fuels. These processes to produce these fuels that we're using have taken millions and millions of years, basically, from compression and just building up, and a lot of chemical activities that require lots of time to actually happen. So we're primarily talking about, of course, coal, mineral oil, and natural gas. All of these, I'm sure you've seen being used in a car, basically for cooking at home. Things are going to be having to change very soon to make sure that we can actually survive into the future with renewable forms of energy. But we need to know a little bit about fossil fuels, so let's start there with fossil fuels. Some basic advantages and disadvantages. For most of these, they are reliable, concentrated forms of energy. We use them, they are good, and we are happy that they exist. One of the disadvantages of fossil fuels is that they need to be transported and stored. And one problem about that is just the act of moving them from one place to another can actually cause all kinds of problems like oil spills and a waste of a lot of this stuff too. Burning them also contributes to global warming, which is something you should know a lot about, but if not, please check it out online. Find out why global warming is a bad thing for us. Coal is probably the one that will last us the longest. We have a lot. There's plentiful supply, but we're still estimating a few hundred years, maybe. Burning it, unfortunately, contributes to acid rain and does all kinds of other things, including contributing to global warming. But every one of these things does that as well, too. Mineral oil is at least a liquid, and we can transport it in pipes. But I mentioned before, oil spills are a problem. And if you've ever seen any documentaries showing what oil spills can actually do to the environment, it's pretty bad stuff. Natural gas burns the most cleanly out of all of these things, so it's nice. We still need to make sure we have our fan on at home while we're cooking, but it's not contributing to the atmosphere in such horrible ways as some of the other ones. But natural gas, unfortunately, is difficult to drill for, and because it is a gas, you have to figure out a way to trap it so it doesn't escape into the atmosphere really quickly and become ungatherable or unusable. When will they run out? Says Jack Bauer from the now long time over television series 24. Make a prediction, pause the video, what do you think? And then take a look at this graph. This is an estimate. So, 40 years in your lifetime, I don't know, I'm almost 40 years old. Not yet, but I'm feeling like it. 40 years, we could be running out of oil within our lifetime. But it depends on how we build our cars and become more energy efficient. If we can build devices that use oil that are more efficient and don't use as much as we used to need, like some of these new hybrid cars, that's really awesome. And maybe we could stretch this use out a little bit longer and come up with some other types of ways, other forms of energy before we actually run out and become really sad. So just take a look at this. I'm not going to describe it in too much detail, but just short, simple pictures that are explaining really simply how coal was formed and the difference between how oil and gas were formed compared to coal. And so this should give you an idea, if you just pause and take a look at this, as to why we just can't reproduce all these fossil fuels again. Okay, consider the age of the earth and how long it takes to make these actual things.
Therefore, now I think, what are fossil fuels? How are they formed? And why are they useful? Uh, you are much familiar with all these things now. So, how are they? How are we using them daily? You know, today fossil fuels are necessary for human survival and everyday life, and are the primary source for the world's energy, right? So that means we are utilizing them in one or the other way in our lives. Okay, they are used for heating, transporting, generating electricity and creating common products like computers, cosmetics, paints, and other household appliances, as they are found in 96% of the items we use each day. Isn't it a huge number? Yes. Now let's see how the burning of these fossil fuels are actually creating any difference on our earth. Yes, we know that materials, substances, and organisms found in nature that are useful to humans, like fossil fuels, are called natural resources. Most natural resources, including fossil fuels, are not distributed evenly around the earth. Deposits of fossil fuels depend on the climate and organisms that live in that region millions of years ago, and the geological process that have since then taken place. Now, burning of fossil fuels, we burn them to get energy, and energy makes our work easier. Therefore, while burning these fossil fuels, a number of pollutants are emitted which are harmful to both the environment and public health. For example, sulfur dioxide emissions are primarily the result of burning coal, contribute to acid rain and other harmful particulate matter. The burning of fossil fuel leads to release of harmful products into the environment as well. Also, the increased consumption of fossil fuel leads to harmful effects like rise in the global temperature. Now, carbon containing fuels, as we have already gone through the components, you remember in the previous slide, we have seen the composition of all the three type of fossil fuels in which carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and sulfur were common in all three of the types. So when we burn these fossil fuels, they release some unburnt carbon particles in the environment, causing diseases to the respiratory tracts, for example, asthma. Now let's discuss some of the disadvantages of fossil fuels. Up till now, we have learned about the advantages and the uses of these fossil fuels. Definitely, when we are burning something, it will be having another some type of disadvantages also. So right now we are discussing over here the disadvantages. Like fossil fuel create a lot of pollution, not only to land but to air as well. And they are not at all environment friendly, right? Their excavation and their mining process causes a lot of destruction to used places, and they are finite energy sources. That means they are non-renewable, and one day they are going to run out, and we were left with no more fossil fuels to be used. The combustion also releases a large amount of carbon dioxide into the air or into atmosphere, which is a green carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is a greenhouse gas and fairly responsible for global warming, that is, rise in the overall temperature of the Earth's surface. Now, here, if you look at this picture, what can you observe over here? Some arrows coming from the Earth's energy is coming down towards the sun's energy is coming down towards the Earth, and some activities are happening on the earth, and in result of that some gases are being radiated which has to go out toward the environment, leaving the earth remain cooler. But it's not the case. Actually, the planet is getting hotter due to the human activities that release heat trapping gases into the atmosphere, which are also called greenhouse gases. That is, we can say humans induced climate change contributed to the record breaking global hot temperature in the past 5 years. Yes, climate is changing. The increasing heat stress As we know, the heat stroke, a dangerous threat to human health. Nighttime temperatures are increasing faster than the daytime, making it harder for the human body to cool at night. You know, researchers have told us that already a rise of 1 degree Celsius, that is 1.8 degree Fahrenheit, in global average temperature are observed. This global warming will thereby produce new patterns and extremes of drought and rainfall and possibly disrupt food production in certain regions. So we have to stop, or we have to think over it again and again before we burn these fossil fuels and create the environment, or the temperature of the earth goes more hotter and hotter. Now, what next? If we are not using these fossil fuels, then what should we do? Yes, this is the solution. As discussed earlier, fossil fuels are non-renewable energy resources. Therefore, humans require alternate, more sustainable, environment-friendly, and reusable form of energy. Therefore, natural resources of energy, that is water, wind, waves, and solar power, yes, we know about biomass as well, are the renewable or sustainable energy resources, as their reserves and supplies do not come to an end. Yes, my children, they will never finish up. These are natural resources and moreover, they increase the availability of power for the industrial, agriculture, and domestic purposes. Yes, if we look onto these, or if we look onto this figure, which is a pie chart, this is telling us that how do we use fossil fuels, or where are these fossil fuels being utilized by the people or by the humans. Energy resources, we know they play a very important role in the economic development of a country. A country which has well developed energy resources has a better chance of development than a country with fewer energy sources. So we can say that a number of like 15% of our people, including in farming and agriculture, are using these fossil fuels, and 20% of the people are using in powering the cars and powering the factories, whereas a bulk amount of 30% is being utilized for generating electricity. Yes, we depend on these fossil fuels to heat our homes, run our vehicles, power industry, and manufacturing, and also finally in the production of electricity. Yes, we know very well that if electricity is not there, we could not do any other work in our home, isn't it? That's all, children, from my side. I hope the lesson was pretty much clear to you, and you have learned a lot of things about fossil fuel, their formation, how are they being used, and are they a renewable or non-renewable resource? How can we replace them if they run off? So here is a little task. I know that you people are going to do it in a quick span of time, and yes, it carries marks as well. Certain questions you have to answer. That is how long it takes to transform fossils into fuel. Yes, you can recall it. I know, but you have to do it properly. Enlist two advantages of using fossil fuels. Yes, describe the impact of fossil fuels on the environment. Finally, identify any four items shown in figure A. Figure A means when you go back to the slideshow, you will be finding figure A there, that are used in your home. That's of 4 marks. You know very well that when a question carries 2 marks, that how long you have to answer or how much you have to give the answers. So please follow the given instructions, which I usually repeat in the class again and again. If it's 2 marker answer question, then you have to at least give two statements to justify your question. Yes, yes, I know you have lots of queries, but here you can communicate your queries through comments on the Google Classroom. So we'll meet there. Thank you for watching. Allah Hafiz. Stay healthy and protected.